Survivor Specialist John and McKenna are back, and this is going to be a fun time discussing episode 11 of Survivor 49, where we take the outwit, outplay, and outlast moments of the episode and relate them to past episodes and moments of Survivor. So let's dive into it because we have some very discussion-y topics today that I'm excited about. It's not specific one thing we were tossing around was catching chickens, because this is an old school kind of thing that happened in this episode, but we wanted to do something a little bit different, and we're going to talk some a little bit broader topics today and have just more of an open forum. So please chime in the chat and come talk with us.
Yeah, I think this episode really lent itself to more broader ideas of Survivor than we usually get. We on this series like to really hone in on very specific moments within episodes and talk about the intricacies of them and how they relate to past things. And we had some for this, but they didn't feel strong enough for us to really dive into. And we felt like by going a little broader with our topics here, it let us more discuss what was happening in 49 this week and how it kind of demonstrates this change in Survivor in general.
Yeah. So with that, we are going to talk our outwit moment of the week, and we're just going to talk some final 7 votes, because the final 7 is really a pivotal vote in Survivor. It's toward the end of the game. You're getting down to the nitty-gritty, and especially with the final 4 fire making, the votes you have are very limited. So we wanted to talk about the final 7 and how Sophie navigated this, Savannah and Rizzo, and how, other people in other final 7s also kind of weave into this Survivor world.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because I think Final 7 often tends to be that point in a Survivor season where it determines what's going to happen for the rest of it. And yeah, you can say that about literally any vote in Survivor. But I had so many conversations with people, whether it be hardcore Survivor fans or more casual Survivor fans this week, just saying, yeah, I think this episode's a really important one because it is going to kind of determine which way the rest of this season goes. Now, granted, do I think Savannah and Rizzo and Sophie Valerdi get to the end now no matter what? No, not necessarily with the way things are going. Do I think their chances got a lot better of doing that after this week? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But did I also think they were dead in the water if things went the other way? No. But this is really a determination of how people are going to interact with each other. And I think when we look at the 2 examples of Final 7 votes that we are going to discuss in a little bit here, that's really what they were doing too, is if you look at a lot of their Final 7 votes, some of them, why Final 7 feels so important in Survivor is because it is usually the part where people start turning on each other. It's the part where you have to...
the end game.
Exactly. It is that turning point towards the end game because it's far enough into the merge that people have kind of established who they're working with. And now it's that time where they're like, okay, but is me continuing to work with these people the best thing for my game? And that's what we saw this week in 49, right? Sophie Segretti, who also, side note, did you see her exit press saying that why they didn't go by last names?
No.
So Sophie, in her exit press with Mike Bloom, in her interview with Mike Bloom, said that they didn't go by the last names Segretti and Valerdi because someone on the cast had trouble saying them.
Oh.
They had too many syllables in them.
Okay.
So,
all right.
That's word on the street there.
But Jeff does the whole last name thing. We still could do yellow and blue.
Jeff vetoed yellow and blue.
No, but yellow and blue could happen in camp. But Jeff himself could be Segretti Valerdi. He could last name people. He does that. That's his shtick.
I assume production just wanted consistency. And that's why there was a conversation about it in general. However, anyways, back to what I was saying. Sophie Segretti was early in this point where she was determining who was best for her working with. She had this option of Christina and Steven, who she kind of felt on the outs the entire way. She really felt scorned when she came back, and they were surprised when she came back after that split tribal council. She never really felt like she was tight with them in the pre-merge at all. And she's formed this working relationship with Savannah, Rizzo, and Sophie Bolardi. But is that best for her game? And that was the real analysis we saw going on in 49. And that's why we saw so many conversations about, oh, well, we should probably just go after Savannah. And it's really interesting to see how this endgame is developing, because it was Savannah, not Rizzo with the idol, that they decided they wanted to target this time around.
Yeah. And so just to get our moments that we're going to talk about out in the open so we can freely move about the cabin, we have the Julia boot in Ko-Rong and the Alex Bell boot in Amazon. And these two are really interesting because Alex was part of a majority 4 that then he misspoke to Rob Sesternino, and then Rob was like, yes, okay. So he put himself in a middling position like Sophie Bolardi did in a sense, where she was like, I could go Savannah and like actually push the Savannah side of things, or we go Sophie and vote Sophie out, and it's now more of the unanimous situation. But she was the playmaker here in the vote, just like how Rob was in Amazon. Then we have Ko-Rong and getting out Julia because she had become a very big social threat, and she a social and a bit of a challenge threat as well. And so that's kind of like why they were leaning Sophie Segretti here, because she is perceived as this beast, even though Savannah has also won, Steven has also won. Like, she is still the target of a lot of people's votes here for threats.
I am so glad you brought up the challenge threat aspect, because it was one of the things that really like irked me about this tribal council in 49. Because, and again, like Ko-Rong, they really do talk about challenge threats a lot, because the options are Julia versus Jason, both who are challenge threats in their own right, how to determine them. But this tribal council, where Jeff is talking about what's it like being a challenge threat to the 3 people who have won 2 immunities each, that's diversity in challenge wins. Like, that's not a big deal. It's only 2 each.
I know, yeah, and I don't know. It's 2 each. Sophie also won hers in the first 2.
And well, it was the first one and the one prior to this, right?
Right. Sorry, yeah. But like hers are so spread out, where like Savannah's are chunked together. You know, I don't know. It feels like I've forgotten about Sophie's challenge performance if I hadn't been told by the entire cast.
Right. And like, that's the thing that's so fascinating. And it's always the thing we talk about with like challenge beasts and whether or not to target them and everything, and how much it really leans into these decisions, right? Even in the Amazon, they're talking about the fact that they have to get rid of Matthew because he's a challenge threat, right? He's a physical challenge threat, which is wild, because the challenge they have in that episode for immunity is not physical whatsoever. It is straight like, do you have social game? Because that's how you win immunity this time around. And it's like, oh, but we have to get rid of the physical challenge.
I know. That's neither here nor there. That frustrated me. And you'll probably hear more of my frustrations over on the Patreon, because that is the episode we decided to watch. So watch that so you can listen to us this weekend. The episode is Q&A, episode 11 from Survivor Amazon.
I think the fascinating thing about all 3 of these votes is that you do have these, and why specifically we ended up choosing this Amazon vote and this Ko-Rong vote, is you have these weird middling groups in both of them. Like, Rob's obviously in the middling group. Rob enters that vote in a majority, right? He is working with Alex, Heidi, and Jenna. And that's an era of Survivor where there are no advantages. He has the ability to just ride it out with those 2, like those 3 for the rest of the game. That's all he needs to do. Guarantees himself Final 4. And obviously, when Alex has that conversation about, yeah, well, we know Heidi and Jenna are like do or die together. So if we get to 4 and I win immunity, I might as well vote you out, right? Well,
And
I don't
not
even
just
understand the
try to
logic
vote,
there.
like it's because this is in the era of a final 2, so it
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense. And then
but
we have Michelle and Sydney
mhm.
in co-wrong of this like middling duo because of all of the different like swaps and like amalgamations of co-wrong. A lot of different people were working together and not working together, because Sydney was like one of those pivotal people with Jason, and then you had Michelle with Julia as well. But they fell on different sides of each other, so it's like trying to get them back and pull them in for a vote, similar to Sage, where trying to pull Sage in for a vote after she is kind of also this like party that doesn't have many allegiances right now, and they've swapped a bunch here too, so like she's met a bunch of different people. So it really is interesting seeing how these few groups navigated this as well, because there's also the tie of Sage and Kyle Jason,
Mhm.
because Scott had just gotten voted out, Jawan had just gotten voted out, and the first things out of their mouth are revenge, but they do it tactfully. Well, sort of.
Well,
But they
I
do
don't know
it
if Sage does it tactfully here.
well.
I love
Okay,
my
they
girl
do it.
Sage, but
They do
like
it.
this choice just doesn't do it for me.
All right, they do it. Not emotionally.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Is they're trying to be a little
They're
more
like
logical about their decision.
right. They're not just like they have like they're a little bit
They're
reserved and save their moments.
they're not another Final 7 episode like Sandra dumping out Fish in
Right.
response to Rupert being blindsided.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, because yes, Sage doesn't hold herself back as much as Jason does in this instance. Jason is really I don't reserved isn't really the right word now that I'm thinking about it.
Well,
He is
he
really
does
he's
go like, "Oh, you just handed Ty the game," right as soon as they came back to camp, which is similar
yeah
to like Sage being so frustrated that Savannah's now just gonna win because we didn't vote her out and you let me put her name down on parchment. What the heck's the matter with you?
Yeah, it is similar, but we also get that confessional from Jason later being like, "Yeah, I'm pissed, but I'm not going to let them know how pissed I actually
Right,
am."
exactly.
Which I never felt like Sage was doing that. It felt like
Mhm.
Sage was more like, "I'm making it very clear that like I am kind of pissed at Sophie here, at Sophie Segretti,"
Mhm.
and because of that, we see Savannah. I mean, the way the edit shows us, right, is Savannah really leans into it and is able to take advantage of that moment, and is
Yeah.
able to take advantage of that. Whereas Jason still remains in the opposition to the plan.
Yeah, how certain moments in this connect where it's like the not it's not wholly each vote is representative of 49. It just has this bit of Amazon and this bit of co-wrong equal the 49 vote, which is really wild watching these two episodes because I was like, oh, we should have done co-wrong, and but the Amazon episode really fits too, and it's like really interesting how Survivor repeats itself.
And these are all still a variation on a theme, which is the most fascinating thing, because all three of these have a different result. In the Amazon, you have someone flipping on the majority and getting them out, right? That would be the like Savannah option in 49. In Co-Wrong, you have everyone sticking with you have people deciding to stick with the majority and voting out the people on the and voting out Julia on the bottom. That would be if the vote went like Steven this time around, right? And instead, what we get is that person in the middle, much like we discussed like last week, like that Sarah
Mhm.
Lucina vote. You have that person in the middle being like, no, 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 this is the person who's like tangentially on neither side and is the one who's like has the most potential to get through here. When really, if we're talking about people in the middle in 49 who are the most dangerous, it's definitely it's the wrong Sophie. They went for the wrong Sophie. Sophie Bolardi is in such a good position here
Mhm.
because for some reason her name has not come up as an option. at all in this post-merge.
What's also interesting too is they were calling Sophie like this flipper. She's gonna go with whatever fits her best. We got to get her out, and that's the same thing that they were talking about Ty as well.
Mhm.
Like Ty was at that flipper. He's just gonna go with the wind and what suits him best. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. They also coincidentally started on Yellow Tribes. Like
Mhm.
it just a lot of stuff starts fitting and puzzle piecing in.
You could say the exact same thing about Rob's sister Nino too, though, right? Like, there's
Mhm.
even confessionals in that episode of Amazon about how Rob isn't really trustworthy because he can go back and forth because you never know which side he's going to go with. Yes, some people do answer Rob as like the most trustworthy person
Mhm.
in the Q&A in that, but he's not the right answer because they were a little sketched out by how willing he was to move around, right? Like we had just seen him vote out Dina.
Mhm.
So there is this thing where it's like, okay, how much can we actually trust Rob? And it's really fascinating to see how in a final seven we have these like archetypes that
Mhm.
arise that we have to really like get into the like finer details of the breakdown of the tribes to see exactly where people fit. But you're always going to have this one group that seems to have grabbed power. You have this group that's like seems like they're a little on the outside, and you have these couple of people in the middle who are really determining it. But it's how each of those different pieces interact with each other
Mhm.
and determine what's best for their individual games. That's why Final Seven is important. Final Seven is really the point where Survivor becomes the individual game. Yes, you can argue that it's an individual game the entire time. You can argue that it really happens at the merge. But I think Final Seven is where the numbers are down enough that you are legitimately, to quote Sydney from Co Wrong in like this episode of Co Wrong, it's a me game, not a we game.
Mhm. Would you say the final 7 is exhausting, grueling, strenuous, stressful?
I mean, in Amazon, the final seven determined the third member of the jury on day 30. So maybe back then,
But you know what else is strenuous and exhausting? This
running around an
journey.
island.
This journey Stephen went on. And we are talking about that journey for our outplay moment, but like in parts. We have it
Yeah,
like separated out in a little bit of parts
this
here.
is this is really interesting because you normally when we get to outplay, we tend to. It's been a while since we talked about a journey on outplay. We tend to talk. I guess we did when we had. Oh, actually, I don't even remember if we did or not. We might have earlier in the season with like the coconut toss and the decision that Juwan had to make. I'm pretty sure we did in some
We
capacity.
also could have I think we also did the blowing the lead in
Yeah,
the first one with Alex.
but journeys don't tend to lead themselves to outplay more. And normally we're like, I mean, you guys have listened to us long enough. You know, McKenna loves challenges. So
Mhm.
McKenna loves revisiting challenges. But this challenge was a little contentious this week. I'm just going to
So
put up
we
Sam
had
Balin's out here, like, just like shit talking the challenge on Twitter and everything. And then you have
well,
even Jeff in like on fire was like, yeah, I kind of like the other version of this challenge. I didn't really like this one.
I liked it. It just needs to be a little bit longer. So
Mhm.
it's full tilt boogie,
Yeah.
but not but twisty. And the only comparable is Australian Survivor, where they did
Yeah.
something similar. And it's like, well, that's not this podcast. And we've talked about the tippy tables
Yeah.
before. So what do we do when the only other challenge is run around an island? Well, we're going to talk about Steven running around an island in comparison to Micronesia when they have to go to exile, aka similar to a journey, and run around an island trying to find all of these different clues to find the idol. It is an exhausting journey because they have to go from point A to point B, C, D, E, F to eventually climb a tree to then find an idol. So it does have that like exhausting rock climbing tidal driven journey that Steven was on in Micronesia.
Yeah, I think the main difference obviously is Micronesia. Exile's kind of used as like this weird catch-up mechanism, like having the
Mhm,
idol on Exile,
mhm,
where it the person who's going to go to exile is almost always on like the outs in some capacity. Obviously, in the early stages of the game, it just like that tribe happens to lose. But when you get into the post merge, it's someone who's on the outs. Let's just send them away, get rid of them. We can strategize without them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But by having the idol there, there's a risk associated with it, which we'll get into in a little bit here. But there's no risk beyond like the exile aspect of Exile Island from going there. Whereas Steven essentially has to do this. He doesn't get an option to opt out of it. He has to do this because if he doesn't, he's losing his vote. Then he's a sitting duck, and that's no good. Like that's no good at all.
Kathy being like, I don't need to do this.
Exactly, right?
In Micronesia.
But the interesting thing with Micronesia is it is kind of the same thing, and I almost kind of wanted something a little bit closer to that from 49 because Steven just had to run around the island.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that if it looked like this was taking more time. And it did not look. Phil mentioned it both on Wednesday and in Digging Deeper earlier today. This does not look like it took him that much time at all. Or like the tide wasn't coming up that quick.
Really diminished once he got back to the chest with the combo lock, and the combo lock was in the same number order and he didn't have to rearrange any of the numbers either. And I was like, that bucket is still pretty high in the air. I feel like he has so much time until it drops. So, or I guess pretty low.
Now granted, I'm pretty sure the mechanism worked that it like as the tide went up, the bucket went higher, then dropped.
Right. And there was still like a lot of space for Steven to maneuver with. But so like that title aspect really kind of felt like a moot point. But we also have another exile. I think our closest here with Journeys is Exile, where Carl gets exiled and he has to deal with coconuts and the tide. Similarly to Steven with, him dealing with the clay pot and the tide.
Yeah, Will brought up a good point on Wednesday. It's just that in these instances where the tide's being used, it does seem like they give way more time than necessary because they actually want people to find these things, right?
Right.
Like, this is something where they want Carl to find that idol nullifier, especially with it being a new advantage. They want that. They want it in the game. They want it. It was easy enough. There's this sense of urgency to it based on the editing and based off like this idea. I think people get an idea of like, oh my God, the tide's coming in, and forget how long it takes for the tide to come in.
Yeah.
Right? Like 6-hour phases, guys. From high tide to low tide, right? 6 hours. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, it depends when you're there, but like even an hour is a long time to do this, right? Like I'm not exactly sure how long this island is. This island that Steven had to run around was the island of the idols. You could really tell in the zoom out shot. It was like, I've seen this before.
Yeah, I just never pay attention to the islands, but which would be interesting to talk about in an episode when we know like who has what beach and talk about that, like maybe at the premiere of something like 50, maybe if we know which beaches people are on, that would be fun to talk about.
You know where we'd probably find that information out is Chat BCC.
Yeah, right.
Let me tell you, Survivor alumni love talking about what beaches they were on.
Yeah, so we have this tied situation with Carl, and I feel like I want more things where like nature is involved, like the tide. It seems like it is a fun element where you can't really judge because I don't know the tide. I don't know how fast this tide is going to roll in or not. So if I'm Steven, I'm like, I have until the tide runs out. Like, this is crazy. And so I'm like running for my life around this island to realize, oh, the tide actually isn't that bad. But I think it is an element of time that not everybody would be equipped to gauge.
I agree. And I think that is the use of the tide rather than like an hourglass, right? And I think it's also why we have these time sessions, why we have
Did
like
you run out of hourglasses?
Maybe we finally run out of hourglasses. Maybe that's what's going on here. But we saw that hourglass in the journey that happened where Nate and MC had to like haul the coconuts back and
That's the
forth and
last
then
one.
look for the thing. But what I'm saying is like that hourglass had so much time left in it, right? Like with these strenuous ones, it's very clear that they're giving enough time for anyone to go on them to do it. Phil said many times, like Christina goes on this, and it's like not ragging on Christina, but she's like the least likely person to be able to run around an entire island and everything. She could still have done this with plenty of time by the looks of it. It's more of a question of like the tide rising is more of a, I'm trying to remember who said it. I think Brandon Donlin said it on Digging Deeper. The tide rising was more of an obstacle as to, is there a point where you can no longer get to the next point you need to get to because the tide goes up, rather than it's going to make it so you can't get this advantage.
Yeah. I mean, hey, just swim, right?
I mean, we did see Steven in the water at some points in this montage.
Yeah.
Again, like it's a montage, we can't tell. I do wish like we had a little bit more knowledge about exactly like distance and stuff. I get we can't for like dramatic aspect of the show, but that I do think is what's kind of missing in this to make it a little more exciting, right? Or even just like the, hey, you have to find this thing, and it because these numbers you had to find were like so obvious.
But what I found more interesting, I think, than the challenge itself is the fact that the entire camp let Steven, who is perceived to be on the bottom, continue and go on this journey. Like for our last moment, we are talking about just letting the person on the bottom win, get something, have a little bit of power. A lot of people are talking about how Steven needs to go. He's on the bottom of the tribe, even though Savannah's the one getting votes, Sophie's the one that goes home. They still don't want Steven to be.
To be fair, Steven did have immunity this episode.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, letting him go, this was before immunity, letting him go on this journey to possibly get something to, pun intended, turn the tides, I think was a very big misstep, because we see in Guatemala where there is a sit out for the challenge for food. We have people battling Gary to try and win a challenge, and Jamie is just like, yeah, you do it, guys, you do it for us. And we see Gary win immunity and thwart plans. Like, this is all, why are they letting Steven do this? Why aren't they participating in blocking Gary?
This is so far one of my largest questions of the entire game for like post game coverage right now. Is why let Steven get a chance to get the idol or an advantage?
He isn't on the bottom as much as we think, because he isn't the one going home. I mean, he won immunity, so maybe do we see Steven go home here instead of Sophie? I don't know.
We know that there was a plan to get Steven previously. We know they knew about Christina's idol and change the vote because of that. The only person who should be completely comfortable in this situation to let Steven go on this should be Sophie Bellardi, because she has the knowledge is power. And she can be like, I want your advantage. However, this advantage is what you can't take with knowledge is power.
She would have had to take it last episode without him using it.
Yeah, like it's such a small chance that you could take it. Otherwise, it's an advantage that gets played before going to tribal council, which is where you have to use knowledge as power. And and Jeff cleared this up. Jeff said, if you use it, then it's already used, so you can't take it away. So I am so confused why production have both of these things on the same season. I'm so confused why you introduce it like literally the round before knowledge is power. I swear. Everyone's talking about the fact like, oh, is Sophie going to take Rizzo's idol and stuff? I swear, if Sophie goes to take this advantage from Steven next week, I am going to be so mad. And I will come in hot in this podcast next
we will
week.
Be talking about stolen advantages that flopped next week. If that
we will be talking, I don't know, something about like production deciding to change the game or something like that. Because let me tell you, this might be one of the worst twists at Final Six since like Do or Die. because I don't understand why we're doing this. But
anywho,
I also don't, and I just don't understand why you let Steven go here. Like, it makes no sense, because there are so many people who seem willing to get rid of Steven. So if it's just like the point where the three of Savannah, Rizzo, and Sophie Bellardi feel that, you know what, it's Sophie Segretti's time to go. And it did seem to be where things were going. Like, they did kind of have the numbers. Sage made it very clear she was a number to do that. So it felt like a really safe thing to do. But what if Sophie won immunity? You're already scared of her as a challenge threat. If she wins immunity and you're just giving an advantage to Steven, what are you doing?
Exactly. And it's like, in the Guatemala example that I mentioned, food is on the line. So a lot of people do want food. But then we have Heroes, Healers, Hustlers. And Ben is out in the crack of dawn looking for an idol. And everybody else is chilling at camp. And he does it again. He goes out and looks for an idol, and everybody's still chilling at camp. Like, they're letting him, they're giving him time to find this idol when they should be trying to thwart that. And then what do you know? He goes and winds up winning the season because he is on the ball finding these idols.
I think it's the biggest thing with these examples that you brought forth here, McKenna. Like, in Guatemala, it's not a question of like, okay, we have to beat Gary here. Because you do, because Gary's your intended target and he goes on to win immunity. Like, that happens. And everyone sits out except for Judd, who's up there by himself. And you're like, okay, whatever, Judd can do it. That's fine. But it just feels like it's a lack of forethought that, what if, you know what, like, betters our chances of Gary not winning immunity? More people competing in immunity. And that's the same.
Have Amy, who's hungry, Stephanie, who's hungry, Rafe, who eats. You have all of these people in this dominant alliance that are just like, no. So it's the same thing of like, I'd rather have food. And then you have Savannah, Rizzo, Sophie being like, it's strenuous.
The emphasis on the word strenuous in this week's episode was astounding. I was just like, guys, like
that,
how strenuous can it be?
Everybody up? Like,
what is the single most strenuous thing we have seen on a journey? We know they're coming back. We know they're coming back that afternoon.
The thing I can think of is Winners at War, Edge. Like, what we just watched of Coconuts and the original Logs.
Yeah.
Like, that is the most strenuous thing I can think of. So that's where my mind is going, having to go one at a time up a giant hill.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty strenuous. I think in the new era, the most strenuous thing we've seen was probably like the 41 journeys, which were like 4 hours long hiking up mountains.
There's also the Sweat and Savvies.
Sure. Those are like
sweats, I guess.
I think I would more classify those as arduous rather than strenuous. However, that's semantics and, getting into definitions and stuff. But when I hear strenuous, like, I don't know, running around an island didn't feel that. Honestly, this didn't feel that strenuous in the first place.
No, I think it's going to be strenuous because it's an endurance situation. Endurance, I'd say, is comparable to strenuous because of the distance and the terrain. I think the terrain is really what's like the kicker here. 100%. And everybody is just like, ooh, no. And Steven's like, are you guys dumb? Okay. Like,
and it was even
do this.
Was Sage the last one to let Steven do it?
I don't know who the last one was.
I can't remember, and I don't put that much detail into my notes.
They all just were like, no, I'm out. And Steven was like, all right. And then once he left, they were like, I hope he doesn't win because that would really thwart our plans. And it's like the same thing with Gary. I hope he doesn't win. That would thwart our plans. And then Ben with his idols. I hope he doesn't get an idol. That would really thwart our plans. And I'm like, why aren't you doing anything about it?
And let's focus on Ben a little bit more here. It's just affording him opportunity. Like, that's the big thing that we're really looking at here. Is it's not this question of like letting the person on the bottom get power or anything like that. It's just giving them the opportunity to do so. Because we know, I mean, again, Survivor's edited show. We can't know exactly what's happening at every single moment and every single minute in the game. However, we do know Ben's out there getting idols or looking for idols when other people aren't. And he is afforded that opportunity by the fact that he is so on the bottom. It doesn't matter if people know he's looking for idols.
Yeah.
But at the same time, why aren't you preventing it, right? Like, we've seen these type of idol hunts before, over and over again. In fact, that was also like a surprising thing we didn't see in this episode was an idol hunt, right? And like, granted, like maybe one didn't happen, or it's not relevant right now. Maybe it happens after this vote, whatever. Maybe there just wasn't time. You would think with someone off on a journey that says, "Hey, let's go look for an idol," but that's just me. So why are we affording the opportunity for these people on the bottom to get an advantage when it's so easy? Yeah, okay.
Is finding an idol easy? No, but
No.
you can also then get up and babysit Ben instead of staying in the shelter. Like, this has worked in Survivor's past, like the Malcolm and Andrea situation, like of just babysitting and knowing where the idol could be potentially, and just monitoring Ben instead of like, he can't possibly find another one. No way.
And I think that's the danger of letting Steven go here, is you don't know what the advantage is. And there's a lot of conversation about this exactly. Like, it's a block vote very strong. It's not very strong at 7. Things that change the number of votes, not strong on odd number of votes. They're very strong on even number of votes, not so strong on odd number of votes, because the best they can do is tie things. So it logically made sense for Steven to just be like, I want immunity. I'm sticking with the plan. I'm just going to like vote whoever you tell me to vote. That is the logical thing for Steven to do here. I think Steven played this incredibly well. But when the vote numbers changing, you need to do that. But the thing is like we see in this episode, Rizzo's even speculating, oh, it's a steal vote. A steal vote is much more powerful on an odd number vote because it doesn't change the number of votes. It just changes where the votes are being cast from.
Exactly. And like, the unknown of letting Steven go is so much more dangerous than, well, I wouldn't say so much more, but like at least in Guatemala, they knew it is the immunity necklace. Whoever wins it is going to be immune. Ben is out looking for an idol, which means he can nullify votes against himself. Stevens, we don't know where it's going at all. So it's like, we don't know if it's an idol. We don't know if it's a steal a vote, a block a vote, an extra vote, a safety without power.
When we get this far into the game, and that's the thing, right? Like, you don't know what advantage makes sense at this point in the game. This point in the game, it's probably not an idol. It's probably safe to say it's not an idol. However, an idol was just played, so you have to speculate that it could be an idol.
Right.
Last season, we saw they didn't see 48. Doesn't matter. Right? They didn't see 48 before they went out. Doesn't matter. Although what we did see in 48 was like Eva's like laddered advantage,
right?
Where you could like gamble on to like bet on it to go a little further, and it was ended up being like a safety without power, right? Which I think makes a lot of sense at this stage in the game. Safety without power at 7 feels like the proper place for a safety without power. We've already seen an extra vote this season, so you can probably eliminate that as an option. Steal a vote's really powerful. In fact, it does feel a little too powerful.
They also don't know that knowledge is power is in the game, so that could be an option for people to think about as well.
That's a good point. Knowledge is power is there. That could be a thing, and like, shouldn't Rizzo then be terrified that he's about to get a knowledge power and steal his idol? Like, maybe they're taking precautions about that. Maybe someone else is holding Rizzo's idol right now. But I think that I'm really glad you brought up knowledge is power, because like we have to just like look into the term that the game gives us to tell you how to play the game. Knowledge is power. So letting someone go. Steven might not even have an advantage. He might be lying. He might just not have a vote. And you know what? Because of the results of this vote, you don't know if that's true or not.
And also, you could have prevented all of this had someone gone and been like, yeah, all right, this is what happened, Alliance. And meanwhile, Steven is like, yeah, I just got an advantage, and then walks away. Doesn't say what it is. Doesn't say, it doesn't say like it deals with a vote. He reveals nothing, and he is a dangerous person to let give that like let him get that power.
Yeah, and he plays it really well, right? Like he plays into Rizzo's paranoia about what it could be. So it'll be interesting to see how it transpires. So next week, it has to be played next week. So we know that's going to happen. The knowledge is power has to be played next week. So that'll be really interesting. Rizzo's Idol doesn't need to be played for another week. So we'll see what happens with that. It's just fascinating. And we've come to finals. We've gone through final 7. We're at final 6 now, McKenna. We have 2 episodes of this season left. How are you, like, who do you think is positioning themselves best to win this game at this point?
I don't know. I don't know because of I know the cop-out answer is because Savannah and Rizzo are on 50, but I think it has to be one of Savannah, Rizzo, Sophie winning with the outside of Steven, because who was it that was saying his edit just is showing that he has more to give because people are still talking about him and he's still getting confessionals and things like that. It was the guest on Predictions and Power Rankings who was on
Omar.
Yeah, there we go. So I thought that point was really good about Steven. But I think essentially what everybody's been talking about, Savannah, Rizzo, Sophie, with the outside of Steven.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I'd really like a Sage win. I think Sage has had such good reads, but she hasn't had the command of the game that those reads deserve. Like she let her emotions get the best of her this episode, which is unfortunate, right? Like she let her emotions get the best of her, and like we see in these, like we talked about these final 7 votes, right? Like Rob, yes, lets his emotions take advantage of him, but he lets his emotions take him to a point where he has strategy in his gameplay. We have Michelle and Sydney doing the same thing, right? Where it's like they see Jason's emotions, they can use that to their advantage, or they can just get rid of this threat and like neutralize them as much as possible. Here you have Sage taking these emotions and really getting played because of them. And it is so unfortunate because she feels like she sees the most of what's happening in this game from what we're being shown in the edit. And then we have, but I agree with you, right? Like Savannah and Rizzo seem to be in good positions, and you're kind of just hoping one of them falters at this point to make things a little more interesting in the end game. Steven is like the casual like champion right now. Everyone loves Steven in the casual community. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what happens. I think this was a bit of a downgrade from the last couple of episodes in the season, but I mean, we were due a boring vote. It's fine.
Well, this has been a wonderful discussion, John. We will continue it over on the Patreon. So please become a patron. It is 50% off up until the finale. So if you want to listen to us talk about Amazon episode 11 this weekend, become a patron. It's fun. John, what else is happening in the Specialist universe?
Bill and Will broke down the episode on Wednesday night. Make sure to check that out if you haven't already. Phil and Brandon Donlin were digging a little deeper, and Blake actually made an appearance this week. So he got there too. Showed up a little late, but was there, and the 3 of them had some interesting conversations. Make sure you check that out. McKenna and Kyle talked about the penultimate episode of The Amazing Race today. Paris, honestly, that leg was a lot of fun. Short leg, but like it was a lot of fun. A very fun leg of The Amazing Race. Then Phil will be joined by Wendell for Predictions and Power Rankings this week. That should be very interesting, getting the winner's perspective going into this penultimate episode of 49. Tech with us a match chat at some point.
Yep.
And then over on the Patreon, McKenna and I are talking Amazon this week. The boys are getting ready to start wheeling out the Caramoan coverage, which I'm going to say it. I always say it when we talk about Caramoan. That season's not as bad as everyone remembers it being. The pre-merge really sucks. The post-merge is absolutely fantastic. And honestly, it's a season that kind of reminds you what Survivor needs in characters. So, and what it doesn't need in characters too. At the same time, very impressive. But that coverage is coming out. We have all the other things going on there. Phil and I are talking Christmas movies this month because I guess it's that time of year. We had a really fun time talking Tokyo Godfathers earlier this week. And then McKenna and I will be back here next Thursday to rewind everything heading into the finale.
Yes. So stay tuned for future coverage, and we will see you next week with another episode.